Right, so this is Unit 2 on the Managing Transnational European Projects, and this is going to focus on EU funding sources. So the contents of this lecture are really going to focus on three main programs: Horizon 2020, or the framework programs, the Erasmus Plus program, and Interreg. And I might just mention one or two other programs verbally at the end, and one of your exercises will be to do some research on those programs that I'll reference for you. So I suppose just at a high level, again, to look at where these programs come from and to look at the different levels. So at a European Union level, really the highest and most priority program is the framework program. So currently it's called Horizon 2020, or the Framework 8 program. The next framework program will be Framework 9, and we'll focus on that in a moment. Then we have Erasmus Plus, which is focused on mobility and capacity building. Interreg, focused on inter-regional cooperation. And then there are lots of other various smaller funds out there that may or may not be applicable or useful to investigate for your organizations. Also, obviously then at national level there are lots of funding programs, and some of these use European funding, such as structural funds, and disperse them in various different ways. So government departments or their agencies might have different funding programs that you can look at. Then obviously there are other local programs that might be sufficient for the funding that you're looking for, so perhaps local authorities or leader companies. Generally always the advice is to look locally, then regionally or nationally, and then at a European level, because as you go up from the local to the European, your level of complexity and administration and overheads increases. So depending on what you're trying to achieve, you may want to look at opportunities. Obviously some of national programs will allow you to bring in international expertise and funding, or experts to work with you. And one of the critical requirements of European funding is that you have European partners and European partnership. So critical starting points that you need to look at. I mean, all funding from Europe is defined based on what are the European Commission's and European Parliament's research and development priorities. And you, as a proposal writer or developer, need to understand those. So there are a number of links here that we'll have a quick look at to understand. So this is the European Commission's European policies. This is a link to funding and tenders for all European funding programs, and just a reminder that European Union also tenders for work, so you can bid for those in open competitions. So we'll have a quick look at those individually. So this is the first link, the European Commission's homepage, and this is the link to their priorities. And without going into all these in detail, you can see that they're grouped under usually 10 different priority areas. So jobs, growth and investment, a digital market, energy union and climate change, the internal market, deeper and fairer economic and monetary union, balanced and progressive trade, justice and fundamental rights, migration, and Europe being a stronger global actor in the world, and democratic change. So all of these have specific sub-priorities. So if we, for example, just go into the digital single market, what is that talking about? So basically bringing down barriers to unlock online opportunities. So it's focusing on the digital economy and all of the various aspects that need to be addressed. So that could be capacity, it could be training, it could be infrastructure, it could be getting SMEs, for example, to engage in online selling, etc. And throughout different areas we have different commissioners in charge of those respective areas. We'll have the different policy areas that they're addressing and relevant updated news. So that applies to all the different areas. We have the background to the policy areas and relevant documents. So we have updates here coming from the Commission at various stages. Why are we looking at these? The important thing is that if you were going to be involved in the proposal in this particular area or any of these other priority areas, you need to understand what the Commission has set its sight on and what its different objectives are in that particular area. Looking at the other page, which we talked about, again you'll get it on the European Commission's page, but we're looking under Policies, Information and Services. So European Commission, Funding and Tenders and Funding Opportunities. This is a great, I suppose, web page in that literally alphabetically every area you can look at, and they will typically bring you to a link. So if we look at humanitarian aid, for example, it will bring us to the calls for proposal areas relevant to that. So currently in 2018 we have calls for proposals for buffer capacities for addressing temporary shortcomings in extraordinary disasters. So different areas here we can see call for proposals for Union Civil Protection Mechanism extras. So you can go into those calls and find out more information and proceed possibly with a funding application in that area. So this is a great web page to bookmark and mind, because it's often a starting point if you're talking to people and you want to look at potential funding actions. You can go in and find their opportunities. So that's calls for proposals and for funding by topic. And then this is where you in particular you can go in and look for tenders. So this is a broad level area, but you can see here we have a section here on tenders, and we'll look, for example, let's go in and look for tender opportunities by different departments. So I'm going to go in and look for something and see is there anything happening in climate change or climate action. And we're going to look in 2018, and it gives the details on. So we have a prior information notice. So a prior information notice is that they plan to go to tender for something. Now I haven't looked at this before, so it's going to redirect me to the European portal, and here we go. We have the contracting authority is the European Commission, obviously, for climate action, and they're looking for procurement around ETS, so that's emissions trading system, and the IT system supporting that. So you can see it's worth 200,000 euros for that action. They have another action here supporting the Commission for the Assessment of Submission of National Implementation Measures. That's worth 800,000. So these are actions that they plan to tender. So if you were in that space, you could be prepared to prepare a tender submission for that. And we can see here that the European tender system is the TED system. And we have tender opportunities by all European institutions. So that could be from the Commission, or it could be departments within the Commission, or it could be the European Court of Justice, for example. So different areas for you to explore, different tendering opportunities. Depending on the size of your organisation, you may or may not be in a position to apply for those tenders. There is a significant overhead in preparing one of those. And there are particular rules that the European Commission has to apply in terms of public procurement, so just to be aware of those also. So once you understand the priority areas and where you may start to look for funding, looking at the framework programme, like it is the, I suppose, the leading light for research and development at the European Commission. It's the main instrument that the European Commission uses, and it's developed by the European Commission and adopted by the European Council and the European Parliament. So the Commission comes up with a work programme, and then it's adopted by the Council and the budget assigned by the European Parliament. So it runs for 5 years, and usually the last year of one framework programme and the first year of the next framework programme overlap. And we are currently in Framework 8, which is called Horizon 2020, and Framework 9 is currently under development. Another term you'll often hear used is the Multi-Annual Finance Framework, so the MFF. So that's currently under development for the post-2020 timeline. So whether it's the framework programs or Erasmus or other areas, it's very important to understand that the European Commission has generally a number of guidelines that either works for a framework or Erasmus or Interreg. And generally the rule is that it will only fund projects which involve several partners from different countries. So there are exceptions to this, but that is the general rule. And usually it's the 3-3 rule. 3 individual partners from 3 different member states or participant countries. So usually the EU 28. So 3 different countries, 3 partners, 1 partner for each of those 3 countries. That's usually the minimum. There are lots of exceptions to those, so it's important to check the terms and conditions. And framework programme and all the other programmes are based on calls for proposals published by the Commission, so there's usually one every month if you look across all the different funding programmes. Your proposals need to fit the scope of the different priorities and those written out in those calls for proposals. And they are looking for quality and excellence, and that is reviewed by external independent experts, or assessors as they're called. And usually each proposal is evaluated by on average 5 experts, certainly in the framework programs. For some of the other programs that can be somewhat less. And it is important to understand that all of the funding programs are considered as grants and not subsidies. So they are grant aiding you to solve a problem that the European Union wants to address. And I suppose reiterating, when we looked at proposal writing in Unit 1, and we looked at the process for developing your proposal, it's important to keep these points in mind when you are writing. So you're writing a proposal to solve a gap or a problem that the European Union has identified. So it knows what the problem is. It doesn't need you to tell it the problem. It needs you to solve that problem. So your evaluator will be looking at your document. That will be the only information that they have. So you need to educate that evaluator. So you need to have your facts and figures ready and right and clearly demonstrated. Some programs, depending on their structure, you can brief or lobby or inform, particularly your national contact points. The guidelines and the calls for proposals tell you what they want. You need to know why. So that's important to read between the lines. So why are they asking for that information? You need to follow the guidelines in significant detail. And the European Union is looking for the best consortium to solve European Union strategic problem. You also need to analyse, if you can, successful or rejected proposals from other organisations. That can be a very useful aspect before you start writing your own bid. So let's go into a little more detail on Horizon 2020 in particular, or the framework programmes. So this is the link to what's called a participant portal, and we're going to go in there at the moment. So if you're going to participate in Horizon 2020, and in some case Interreg and Erasmus programs, you need to be registered on the participant portal. It is the main starting point for all Horizon 20 funding opportunities. You need to register yourself and your organisation, and you can find calls, and I'm going to take you through the basics of a proposal submission. So let's have a look at this. So this is European Union's participant portal under Research and Innovation. So as I mentioned, you need to be able to log in here to access and submit proposals. So if you haven't already done so, you can register And this is one of the tasks that I want you to do, is register yourself on the participant portal. So I'll put this link up on Moodle. You want to go in and register yourself, so you'll see the details that it asks you for, and it'll ask you to create an account. And it's important that you are able to do that, and then you can access content and proposals, and people can invite you to join different consortia. So I'm just going to log in here. So as with everything, do take care with your password. Make sure you protect it and it's a secure one. So I'm logged in. Great. I want to go out of here. Why is it not bringing me to the portal? So I'm just logging in here, so it's logged me in. And this is the basic section here. You can see it's giving me some information here about my area, my organization, my proposals, my projects, notifications, etc., my expert area, funding opportunities, how to participate, projects and results, experts, support. We have the general information here about Horizon 2020 and 2007 program, and some very helpful information here for new arrivals at the area. I'll just quickly go through the my area here. So my organization, it'll tell me that I'm linked to Limerick Institute of Technology. This is the PIC number and its VAT number, and it's a validated organization. So the PIC information number, it's very important. Again, if you're going to participate, your organization that you work with will have to have a PIC, so the participant information code. So very important that you know that and you have it to hand. And if your organization doesn't have one, it can register for a PIC code very easily. Up here we have a Horizon 2020 online manual, and we'll come back to that in a few moments. And in there is your ability to be able to create your PIC code and register as a user. So if I go in here to my proposals, again, this will give me some information here. So these are all the proposals I've been involved with. So I've deleted out a lot of previous ones that were unsuccessful or successful. So I'm going to take you through one here in a moment. But you can see it gives me the list. This is the call that we were responding to, the funding type, the proposal ID, the acronym, status, time to submission, and these are actions here that you can go in and do follow up. Again, we'll have a look at that. Here's my current projects. So we have a number of different projects that are ongoing at the moment. Have my notifications, so they're notifications that come to me, so I'm not going to open those because they're particular project related. Any formal notifications, and my expert area, so you can create your own profile about yourself in there and potentially become an expert evaluator. So I'm going to go into funding opportunities here. So, and we're going to look at Horizon 2020 in particular. But you can see in this area here, we have all the different funded areas that we can investigate. So there might be lots of different areas that are of interest to you. So I'm just going to go into Horizon 2020, and I'm going to search for a call. So very easily we can search in here under all of the subject areas. So societal challenges. Now my expertise is in energy, so I'm going to go into an area that I obviously know. So I'm ticking here, so it basically subdivides what's available here. You can say I want to look at forthcoming or open topics. So I'm really only interested in open topics. And you want to sort by publication date. So great. Here's the societal challenges in the energy space. I'm going to go into this area here. And down here we have a list of all of the forthcoming and open calls. So I'm going to just, you can see there's a lot of funding available in the energy space. So we have one here, mainstreaming energy efficiency finance. We can click in there. So here's the detail. This is the topic identifier. So SC3 really, EE10 is, so societal change, EE10. So EE10 really is the call identifier. It's telling it it's running in 2018, 19 and 2020. So it's a CSA, coordination and support action. So that's not just mainly research, it's primarily looking at support to national and European directives and policies. We're opening this call in January 2018 and the deadline is 4th September 2018, and there's going to be another call in 2019 with similar timelines, due at 5 p.m. Brussels time. Note, Brussels time. So here we have the link to the call, the budget overview, so very important, but we have most of the information here. So the topic description, so this is what the Commission wants to solve. So it's looking at investment costs for energy efficiency. I'm not going to go through this all in detail. So it gives a specific challenge and then it gives the scope for proposals. So the proposal should address at least one of the following. Okay, so we have 6 bullet points here. So it's looking at development, demonstration and promotion of frameworks for the standardization and benchmarking of sustainable energy investments. So that's one area. Capacity building for banks, etc., etc. And down here is the expected impact. So this is critical. You need to be able to hit all of these points and demonstrate through your proposal that you're going to create this impact. So we need to show the number of financial institutions and other stakeholders reached, the framework, standardization, benchmarking, descriptions, etc. That there'll be a higher allocation of institutional investments to energy efficiency based on a baseline, primary energy savings, investments into sustainable energy triggered by the project. So all of these will have to have numbers and justifiable analysis behind them. And we're also looking at CO2 savings. So if we look at the other conditions, terms and conditions, these are the eligible countries. You need to look at Annex B and Annex C, so they're of the work programme, so they describe who's eligible, the scale of partnership that's required, but we can see here at least 3 legal entities shall participate in an action. Each of the 3 legal entities shall be established in a different member state. So that's the 3 and 3 rule that I talked about earlier on. Importantly, the legal entities must be independent of each other. So we can't have, in this case, a bank in Belgium and a bank in Germany, but they're essentially branches of the same bank. We can't allow for that. We have the evaluation criteria, timeline for evaluation, and specific rules around CSAs or coordination and support actions, and some other details about budget flexibility, etc. Very important for most European proposals is open access to research. So basically you will be asked as part of the contract, if you are successful, if you're willing for the research outcomes to be made openly accessible, subject to relevant data protection and intellectual property protection rights. And these are all additional documents that you should look and understand. So these are critical points. They might look small, but you need to understand this is the work programme for secure, clean energy efficiency. This is the work programme for climate and action. And then we have dissemination, exploitation and evaluation. Very important to understand those. And if we scroll down here at the very end, we can see partner search area. So there are 7 partners or organizations that have said we'd be interested in participating in a proposal in this area. So we can see there's a couple of people there. I don't know any of these, so Planet Sustainable Energy, it's an ESCO in Portugal, and so ESCO is an energy service company. So they're looking to get involved in this area. They're saying they could coordinate, or they are looking for different partners to work with them. So it's one way of finding partners. It's not one that I recommend, because really you don't know anything about these people. But it's an option to consider if you're looking for a particular partner. Somebody there might have indicated their interest in submitting a proposal, and it might fill a gap. So down at the end here, sorry, I'll just go back down here, we can see that this is how we start a submission. Now, I've already gone into a particular call area and began to start a submission. So when we click start here, it will bring us into a starting point, and I'm going to take you there now. So this is the one I looked at earlier, and it's called Tester. So this brings me back to my proposal area. So you can see that over here it's currently in draft phase. I have 152 days before I have to submit it. I have two buttons here, ED and DE. ED is edit draft and DE is delete proposal. The other areas, so these are ones we submitted previously. PC was what's the consortium, VS was view the submitted document, or FO, check in was there any follow-up. So I'm going to go into ED here. So this is the screen that I'm being taken to now that you would get to once you click that start proposal button. Okay, the only step that you'll have to complete is insert the PIC number of your organization, because if you're starting proposal, it means you will be the coordinator. So you'll insert your PIC, and then it will create this form here. So we have a very simple process here. We've logged in, we've found the funding stream, we're going to create a draft, we're going to add the parties and edit the proposal. So at any stage we can add parties or partners to the project, and we can upload our documents. So basically for your proposal you have two documents to propose. One is your technical annex 1 to 3 and technical annex 4 to 5. Technical annex 1 to 3 is your needs analysis, impact and innovation, and technical annex really is describing the partners and your budget. So relatively simple to understand. Oops. So even if you don't have your consortium ready, you can start to develop a proposal, and at any stage you can go back and add parties. So I'm going to go back here. So you want to add a partner. As long as you know the PIC, you can type that in, or you could search. So it's recommended that I search for Oxford. These are all of the organizations that have Oxford in their name, so I could pick one of those and add it. Now I'm not going to do it because this group will then get an email saying I've added you to this proposal, and we don't really want that to happen. I'm going to exit out of that. Let's go in back to where we were. You can see down here you download the templates that you have to use, so very important to use the right templates, and then you simply upload those. So to quickly show you what one of the template looks like, so this is a proposal I'm going to take you through in Unit 3, some case studies. So this is really the section that you're going to be focusing on. So excellence, impact and implementation. So how can you prove that your proposal aims and objectives meet the work program and that you're excellent at what you're doing? what will be the impact of what you will do, and is it in line with what the Commission wants, and then what are you going to do, what's the work plan, describe your work packages, your consortium, the people who will do it, and the resources that will be committed. So we're going to come back to that at a later stage. When you have that written, you simply upload it. You upload Technical Annex 4 to 5. You may have other documents, ethics supporting documents, or letters of support. Then you will validate. So if I click validate here now, I will get errors because I haven't uploaded my documents. When I'm clear and I don't have any more errors, I'll click submit, and bingo, it's gone. Again, reminder that that needs to be done well in advance of the call deadline. So a reminder, that's where we search for our different funding areas on Horizon 2020. They all follow the same process. Find the call, click the submit proposal button, and off you go. That's in particular if you're a coordinator. If you're going to be a partner, you will just be sending information to your coordinator, who will prepare all the documentation and submit them. So let's have a look back then at the Interreg program is a little bit different. I will quickly go through it. So it's very wide ranging, and it applies to, basically, Interreg stands for Interregional Cooperation. So when we talk about interregional, some of the example could be the southeast region of Ireland and the region of Wales. There are lots of different regions covered by different Interreg programs. Again, they have periodic calls for proposals, usually once a year. There are complex application forms, and there are different very other programs. Other warning is that it's not 100% funding, usually 60 to 70% funding, irrespective of your organisation type. Generally, for all Horizon 2020 funding, it's 100%. For most public sector organisations and industry, it's 50 to 70%, depending on the particular call topic. Interreg is 60 to 70%. So that can be a challenge for different organisations, because you have to come up with the matching funding. One thing to note, that really Interreg is designed for public authorities, not ideal for private institutions or organisations or consultants. Other organisations can be partners, or in some cases coordinators, but generally they're better to have a public authority as a coordinator. There's generally 3 to 4 priority areas within each Interreg call, and horizontal priorities, and these horizontal priorities typically align with horizontal priorities that are there in the Horizon 2020 program. So gender inequality, open access to research data, sustainability of the action. As I said, this calls every 6 to 12 months, and depending on the Interreg call that you're looking at, you have several opportunities. So we're going to take you briefly through the Interreg Europe call site. There are some other Interreg areas. So there's the Northwest Europe area, the Ireland-Wales area, Interreg North Periphery region, North Periphery area. So lots of opportunities under Interreg. So welcome to the Interreg Europe website. You can see that really it has 4 priority areas: R&D, research and innovation, SME competitiveness, low carbon economy, environment and resource efficiency. So a lot of stuff on the environment. So actions that local authorities are typically important or prioritised on. So lots of information here about the funding, the platforms, news and events, my country, so what's happening in your respective country, and different projects. So we're going to go in here and look at calls for projects and see what's available. So again, we're looking at online applications, so very important. So we currently have a call open down here. So we submit them through the Interreg online application system. Usually it comes available about 2 to 3 months before the call is open. And so our current call is opening on the 7th of May until the 22nd of June. And the information about how to apply. So here we go. It's targeted at public authorities and not-for-profit organisations. It has to focus on one of these different areas. And some very useful self-assessment tools that can check to see whether the project will be valid under the Interreg rules. And similar to Horizon 20, lots of very useful information, including a partner search, the program manual, instructional videos, FAQs, and events and workshops that would help you find partners, test your idea. So, plenty of opportunities to understand what Interreg is about and whether your funding will your idea, your concept would be would be eligible for funding under there. So looking under the Discover projects, you can quickly go in here and see the types of projects that are developed. So we have a whole range of different activities here. Smart and green mining regions of the European Union, Union regions towards the circular economy, roadmap for integrated corporate social responsibility, etc., etc. So the starting point before you develop a proposal is go in and have a look and see if it's been done already. If it's been done already, you need to pull out, because they were not going to fund the same project twice. So have a look under the different areas. So if it's SMEs that you're interested in, you can look at the different policy actions that they're looking at, figure out what's happening in terms of events, and look at the facts and trends of SMEs in the region. So again, this is information that you need to read, that you need to understand, because this is driving the call for proposals. If you don't know the facts and figures in here, for example, then the evaluator will know that you're not an expert compared to somebody else that potentially they could fund. So looking at the other Interreg areas, there are 3 other ones. One of your tasks is going to be to go in and have a look at one of those and find out a little bit more and identify a potential funding area within those that you might consider applying for. So the last one is Erasmus Plus, that we're going to cover in any detail. So Erasmus is focused on capacity building. So this program that you're involved in is about capacity building, and Erasmus Plus, in many people's eyes, is very much about mobility of students and academics across Europe for educational experiences, and certainly that is a core part of it. But there are also projects funded, so strategic partnerships to address specific problems, and then different types of alliances, so knowledge alliances or sector skills alliances. So knowledge alliances are partnerships between higher educational or vocational education or further education organizations and different sectors, so for example SMEs, to address an issue. Sector skills alliances are very large projects that really look at a whole sector coming together. So for example, we were just recently involved in one in the construction sector, which is looking at upskilling of the construction sector across Europe. Critically for Erasmus Plus, you need to have academic partners in the consortium. So that can be academic in terms of vocational training, further educational training, or higher educational training. So they're critical for you to be successful. Erasmus is slightly different in terms of its funding. It uses a unit cost model. So for most application types, the unit cost depends on your country. And generally the unit costs are designed to give you about 75% of real costs. But depending on how you manage your funding internally, you can squeeze a little bit more. It is a more straightforward application process. And again, minimum rules apply. Usually the 3 and 3 rule applies, but in some cases it's more. You need 5 and 5. And they do encourage also international cooperation outside of the EU, as with most other European programs, but it's particularly strong in Erasmus Plus, that you can work with other partners in different areas. So here's the links again. So lots of opportunities for funding. Really targeting both education, training, youth and sport. So they're the 4 priority areas, and they have different instruments under each one of those. So let's have just a quick look at the main area. So this is the Erasmus Plus main page. So all of the information is here, what it is and what it is. So you can see here it's a funding scheme to support activities in the field of education, training, youth and sport. So mobility, that's where we talk about students or academics moving. Key Action 2 or KA2 is what they talk about, so that's innovation and good practice. KA3 is policy, so that's where the knowledge alliances apply. We have Jean Monnet, which is about teaching really for academics to move around Europe. Particular focus on sport. And here's a link to the different funding opportunities. Again, updates published very regularly. So you can see here we have an info day on social inclusion and common values. That's happening on today in Brussels, I imagine. Info days are very good ways of finding partners. And you'll see in the Erasmus websites here, this is a typical area. So what does it support, who can participate and how to apply. Let's just quickly go in and look at sport, for example. So this is the sports call page. So there are different opportunities. There's different collaborative partnerships, small collaborative partnerships. So we have budget up to 400,000 for collaborative partnerships. Application deadline 5th of April. At midday. And we're going to go in to look at the collaborative partnerships, for example. And the timeline for that. So the deadline for this is the 6th of April at 12 o'clock. Takes 3 months to evaluate. So you know in September, start date 1st of January. If we look back, for example, at the small collaborative partnership, so that's closed, and we have not-for-profit sports events, for example. Again, we have the same structure. Who can benefit from it? Who can apply? So we can see public bodies, sporting organizations, and how our application is selected, and what's the timeline. We'll have to look at the guide. There's obviously particular details in that guide. So lots of opportunities under Erasmus. So the typical funding programs that are used are, as I said, the strategic partnerships or the knowledge alliances. So one peculiarity of Erasmus is that sometimes your applications are submitted through a national agency rather than through the European Union. And that's because there's delegated agencies across Europe that work locally with potential proposals, and you can submit in particular strategic partnerships to those because they're smaller projects. So for example, in Ireland, the national agency is called Lergus, and they have all of their information up on their website. And they, sometimes have different rules, slightly different priorities and different systems. So it's important to get to know your national agency and understand what they're looking for, and also understand what their budgets are within their calls every year. So they usually have information days that you should attend to understand what they're looking for. But Erasmus can be a very useful fund to start projects, start training, start building networks, and then build those into future Horizon 2020 proposals. So we've just done a whistle-stop tour to 3 funding areas: Horizon 2020, Interreg and Erasmus. There are many more out there, so you need to find one that matches your needs. You need to network, find good partners. You need to check constantly the funding rules and all of the eligibility rules, and bring your finance people into the team early so that they get up to date on the different funding application opportunities and to understand and start reading the rules, because if you're the technical expert, that's what you want to be spending your time working on, and not looking at different funding. So the last area that I'm going to introduce to you is the Norway EEA fund, just as an example of another area that I want you to investigate. So this is Iceland, Liechtenstein and Norway grants. So these are called EEA grants because these are not full members of the European Union, but they do contribute into a fund which you can apply for. So one of your tasks is to look up this, I'm going to call it the Norway grants, and look to see if there's any opportunities for you to develop funding opportunities or proposals in this area. So this link will be up on the website, so it's eeagrants.org, and one of your tasks will be to investigate that. So again, another funding area that you may or may not have heard of previously. So that's it really on this whistle-top tour going through the different funding areas. Your number of tasks that you're going to have to complete will be to register on the participant portal if you haven't done so already. I'm going to get you to check other Interreg funding areas and recommend opportunities for proposal development. And then finally you're going to have to look up the EEA grants. Again, all these details will be on the website for you to target and complete.